Inspire.
Okay. All right. So for the interest of time, we are going to get started. Good evening or early evening, everyone. I am Zenobia Harris, CEO for the Kent Chamber of Commerce, and it is with pleasure that we are able to bring you this three-part series for grant writing. Obviously, since the pandemic, we have seen the need for folks to be able to tell their story in 180 characters or something crazy like that, and that's difficult to do, right? So we're putting a lot of weight on Angela's shoulders, but really this three-part series is trying to give you an understanding specifically today on, how grant readiness. Are you ready to apply for a grant? And this is something typically that our nonprofit organizations deal with, but now our for-profit organizations are dealing with this as well. And so today we're just going to be going over part one. Again, I would like to send out follow-up information and check in with folks who are not chamber members after this event. So please put in the chat box your contact information, your name, your organization, in a way that I can reach you via email or phone number, whichever you're comfortable with. Just so you know, this will be recorded for further use. So if you want to, you are welcome to turn off your camera. Again, this is an open forum, so if you have questions, we recommend that you use the raise your hand function in the bottom of your screen. And we will get to you and get to those questions. I'm really here just as a tech person. Our expert for today here is Angela. I will let her do her own introduction because I just will not do it justice. But I do know that she has great information for us as well. So with that being said, Angela, she's already sharing her screen. Hopefully everyone can see it. And I will be here monitoring the chat.
Great. Thank you, Zenobia.
You're welcome.
And good afternoon, everyone. Good early evening. As Zenobia said, I'm Angela Beard. I am the director of the Fundraising Academy at City University of Seattle. That's a big mouthful. But we are a nonprofit that exists to help other nonprofits. Our mission is to, one thing I have to figure out is how to advance these slides because the mouse doesn't seem to want to do anything but zoom.
Maybe
there
an
you go.
enter.
There we go. Our mission is to help nonprofits significantly increase their fundraising capabilities. I'm just reading it out, and impact they have in their communities and society. I get paid to help people raise money, to teach them how to raise money for free or low cost. And I love doing that. I was on your side of the table for many, many years. And so it gives me a good deal of personal satisfaction to be able to watch folks just take what I teach them and tear it up and raise more money for all the good work that we do. So without further ado, because there is quite a bit of material that I've even, I've trimmed and sliced and cut down, I want to let you know that at the end, 5 o'clock, at the end of this workshop, my plan is for you to be able to walk away or leave your computer or whatever, being able to evaluate your organization's readiness to seek and manage grant funding, to understand the importance of prospect research to an effective grant seeking strategy, to know where to locate characteristics of a prospective funder, and also consider the ethical implications of prospect research and how you can ensure integrity of your own work. I am super informal, and I'll do several what we call in the teaching biz, I believe, popcorn questions, where anyone can pop up, or in this case, put in the chat their thoughts. So please feel free to interact. I'm keeping an eye on the chat. It flashes at me, of course, when someone has something to say. So I'm good at multitasking. Do not hesitate. There you have it. So let's go right on ahead. So grant writing. How many of y'all have a grants program now? Maybe you could put a thumbs up or a yes in the chat or some indication. Yes, no, maybe, thinking about it. Wish you didn't have to, but still do. Okay, so we've got a couple folks with thumbs up. We've got a yes. We've got 2 yeses. Yay. All right. So you folks can jump right on in and help me talk about the fact that sometimes when we're new, or when we have a board that needs, some help understanding how fundraising works, it's easy to think that grants are easy money, right? You send off a letter and you get a big check. That's not always necessarily the case, right? Folks that do it, there are a lot of things that have to be in place before your organization is ready to embark on a grant seeking program. And I should tell you that Zenobia, I think, said that we would be distributing things after the program, but yes, these slides will all be sent out because at the end I have quite a few resources, articles for you to read, etc. And this is taken directly from one of them, and there are a couple. This is a real overview of what you need to have in place to be ready to write grants, okay? And I'm just going to read them off, but essentially you have to have good leadership in your organization, right? You have to have a board that's active and supportive of your fundraising. You should have a executive director who supports fundraising. I'm with, like you, they don't always, but we're talking ideally here. You need to have a mission, vision, and goals for the future. This is a must. I mean, you already know that you need those just to incorporate as a 501c3. So hopefully your mission in the meantime hasn't gotten lost or destroyed or ignored. You need to be active, have an active purpose. What are we about? Who do we serve? What do we do to serve that need? You're going to need to have financial policies and procedures in place to ensure the proper accounting of funds. Why is that? Does that seem obvious to everyone? It's a kind of a duh moment. Well, you'd be surprised at how many folks, both board and staff, don't understand that funders like, and this presentation is mostly directed for nonprofit grant writing. For-profit folks will be able to get something out of it as well, and I will do my best to answer your questions. But in the nonprofit realm, funders are generally still very interested in supporting programs and projects, right? A specific thing that you do, your soup kitchen, your early education program, your a particular production that you put on if you're in the arts world, etc. And what does that mean? Anyone? Shout it out. You know what it is. Restricted funding. That's right. So you need to have something in place where you can account for those funds that you're awarded, the expenditures on the project, and be ready to report when it's time. You need an operating budget. Or the funder's going to want to see what the scope of your operation is. A budget is just a plan with numbers attached. So they are going to want to know, what do you do in a year? What do you spend on wages? What do you spend on programming? What are you bringing in revenue other than what you're asking for from them, etc. Right? Make sense to everybody so far? Great. Okay. Slide 2. A strategic plan. Now this one is a little hairy, isn't quite the right word. Strategic plans and funding requests should be lining up. If you don't have one, I would hope that you're looking to have one in place soon, or have a plan for getting there, or a good explanation, and COVID is probably a good one for how you're going to get in a space where you have a plan for the next 3 to 5 years. Not everyone does, and that is kind of a segue into a little bit of a tangent here, in that all of these ideally are in place, but not every organization has every single one of these criteria in place, up, running, absolutely tip top. That could be okay. It's going to depend on the funder, on your reasons for not having something in place, how essential it is, etc. Okay. So where I have seen many organizations get grant funding without a strategic plan, in order to discuss in your application with your funder how their support is going to move your organization forward in the direction that your board and the community and everyone has decided it should be going, you need to have the plan to show them. yeah, this meets this objective. This is why we're going in this direction, right? Okay. You need to have some history of effectiveness, unless you are applying, as we'll learn later in the discussion, for something called seed money. Unless you are applying for startup capital, um, you're gonna need to talk about your impact, why it matters, what your reach is, how good you are at achieving the change that you want to achieve in your community, right? Like everyone, funders are philanthropic, yes, but of course they want to contribute to a cause, to a mission that is making a difference. That's their job, to distribute funds to organizations that can bring about the change that their priorities have identified. Okay. And organizational capacity. Do you have the capacity to manage not only the grant itself, but clearly the program or services that you have applied for? Um, and I always go off on little tangents um, when I talk to people about this, and that's because I've had so much experience, and I've literally been in spaces where the organization saw a foundation with an RFP over big money, or they were like, "Oh, we could get that grant if we write it." And then I said, then they would stop for a minute, or I would say more likely, but you don't have staff to do that program. You know, this is an education grant and we're an arts organization. If you get this money, A, it's mission creep. B, you're going to have to hire or identify the experts and the resources that will be able to enact the program. Usually I was able to talk it out of it. I'm out of it, but just in case it wasn't obvious, capacity is important. All right. So, thinking on your own organization's capacity, just reflect for a minute and see, think about how many of these you check off. Okay. I'm not going to ask anyone to share unless they wish to, but I also bring this up because this is a very short article about grant readiness, and I included a very long one, at a very thorough, comprehensive one at the end of in the PowerPoint, as on the resources page, that you can actually look at and check off, check, check, check. These are pretty general. This is like, the longer one could be very helpful. All right. Anybody have anything to share about their organization capacity? Does anybody think that's an issue? Um, Anybody want to ask what could be done about a certain weakness or not? All right, we shall carry on then. Okay, so you've decided you're in a great place to start or build on a grant seeking program. Where you're going to have to start is with prospect research. Who does prospect research? Thumbs up, thumbs down, yes, no, maybe. Little bit, Debbie. I'm calling you out because you're at the top of my screen. Um, I know I did not have the good fortune to have a full-time prospect researcher, which is why I'm pretty good at it myself, I must say. But some of the larger hospitals, universities, even some of the larger like United Way, et cetera, have full-time folks that do this. So if you all are wondering where people come up with these wonderful grant opportunities and places to apply to, first of all, let's go over the basic requirements for considering a funder or even an individual, but that's not our topic today, a viable candidate for soliciting or cultivating for a gift. Okay. Now, is having a lot of money enough? What do y'all think? Yes, no, maybe? I'm going to tell you a little story about my 30 some years in fundraising. Yikes. I'll go to a cocktail party or something else with friends, right? And all my well-meaning, the people that I meet, when they hear I'm in nonprofit fundraising, they're like, oh, you should just go to Bill Gates and ask him for money. Anyone have that experience? Now they mean well, and I understand that they mean well, and that's why I never get snarky with those folks. But what they don't understand, not being professional fundraisers or nonprofit folks, is that there are 3 criteria for considering a prospective donor a possibility. Those are capacity, yes. They have to have the means to make a gift of the size that you're contemplating to meet the needs of your organization, right? Number 2 is just as important, interest. They have to have interest in supporting what you do. And this is where we run into the snag with Gates, or I do, because what do the Gates Foundation support? International health and education. Those are their main focuses. Those are their priorities. They don't support the arts, and that's their choice, right? It's Bill and Melinda's money and all the other folks he's brought along with them. That's what they want to see change happen. That's their prerogative. So for me to go after Gates is a waste of time because they don't have any interest in supporting the mission that I work for in general. The third, which is really more appropriate or important for individual donors, but does figure in with grant funders, is affiliation or linkage. So we want to be able to use or create a relationship with our organization between us and the funder. Now there's a little bit different way to go about this in grant funding than in individual funding, because for individual funders of all kinds, and let's review what they are, right? There are government agencies that make grants and or contracts, corporations that make corporate gifts, and foundations, both private and public, that award grants, right? Each one of these institutions, which is why I call it institutional fundraising, employs people to help you get money. They have program officers, they have corporate responsibility managers, and the government have usually program directors for whatever human services, arts, education, etc. So it's a little more clear cut how you build a relationship with these folks. You pick up the phone, you call them, you say, hey, I see that you have your grant applications out. I think I have a project that would fit. Can I tell you about it? Can I come see you? Can I send in a letter of inquiry? Sometimes they'll talk to you, sometimes they won't. But that's kind of how it's done through the program officer, right? And there's not as much kind of the dance that we have to do with the individual donors. That's their job. So you can at least know that they aren't going to slam the phone down on you or anything crazy like that. It's their job to deal with you and give away money. So before you start approaching these folks, you need to think about the program you're trying to fund, and organize your thoughts on keywords and information that will help you in your search for potential funders. Okay? And this comes down usually to for whom, what, where, and how are you seeking funding? And we'll get into that a little bit after we talk about, I'm going to quit explaining to you and just carry on. Because it's quite a extensive database that we're going to look at. Before we go on, some people get a little squirrely about prospect research, more with individuals than grants, but they feel it's intrusive. They feel it, it's a little bit like stalking. And I'm here to tell you that it's just the same as if you were going to invest in a company. If you were, looking at hiring an individual, and especially now that the internet is so pervasive, right? Everything that we look at in prospect research is public record. And there's an organization, American Prospect Research Association, listed here, that governs the ethics of prospect research and also provides training and all kinds of cool things. That link connects you to their website. So folks are watching out for this. They want to make sure that we as fundraisers are acting with the highest integrity and, playing by the rules of the game. I we already talked about the 3 qualifying criteria: capacity, interest, and linkage. That's all you're looking for, right? Information that supports one of those 3 questions as to what the potential donor has available to them. I always, when I was doing prospect research in my day, and still, I would enter it into a database, and my criteria was, if the donor came up behind me and was looking over my shoulder at their record, would I be uncomfortable with what they saw? So moving on to the sources of information, and I'm kind of flying through this, folks. I hope that's well, we'll have plenty of time for questions, and whatever I miss, you can ask me about, or you can reach out later. There are several sources of information for potential donors, okay? The biggest and most used one is the Foundation Directory Online. This is an organization, Candid, in New York, that publishes a complete database of all grants made in a year. And that is online. It is expensive if you have to pay for it. It is $70 a month, but they have partnered with several regional, more than several, dozens and dozens of regional libraries to make the information available in the library for their patrons. Unfortunately, it's not online, which kind of in COVID is a bit of a drag. But when you are ready to go and do your prospect research, you can get down to the Seattle Public Library downtown, and it's also in Redmond. Redmond, I was especially, it's closer to y'all, and there's a wonderful librarian over there that is super helpful and knows everything backwards and forwards and can help you, okay? It's in Marysville up north, that's down in Tacoma, and also in Bremerton, and there may even be more. I'm sure they've gone on adding them since I wrote this thing. So in the Foundation Directory Online, you'll find their national affiliates list. So you might want to check that out. This is at candid.org. I see something flashing. Do we have a question? Is it online? Oh, that's great to know. Thank you, Anne. So check the chat. Have a copy that link, and you can dive in yourself once we've finished this lesson. Okay, that's good for them. Candid also publishes, besides the Foundation Directory Online, Foundation 990s and Foundation profiles for free. And if there's anyone who doesn't know what a 990 is, those are the tax forms that, even though nonprofits do not pay taxes, we are still required to file, and they are public record. So us charitable organizations that are serving the community have to file, but so do foundations. Foundations are also nonprofits, right? What's the advantage of seeing a foundation's 990? Any guesses? Well, they have to list the grants that they make. Yes, they do. So if you have a particular funder in mind and you want to know what they did in the past year or the tax year in question, if you go out to their 990 on Candid, you will be able to look it up. This is used, by the way, for those who remember GuideStar. GuideStar and the Foundation Center merged, and the one organization is now Candid, and it lists all the 990s that we used to find at GuideStar, and you can check and see how much a foundation's assets are, for example. Why does that matter? Well, foundations are required by law to retain their IRS standing. They have to give away 6% of their assets every year. So, if they have assets of $2,000 and you want 10,000, well, that's probably not going to happen, right? So it just gives you kind of a gauge as how much you're going to be giving away in a year, and if your request is even, feasible. Also, it'll list our grants. So take advantage of those 990 databases. They're really super helpful. There's also a search engine called NOZA, N-O-Z-A, that lists foundation grants for free. Subscribers can pay to get access to individual information. If you're the only development person in your shop, you should know that. NOZA has a lot of information about individual giving. I swear they have a big stack in a warehouse somewhere of every arts program and annual report and everything, and they just keep adding lists donor lists to their database. But that being said, NOS is a great source of information for foundation grants. Let's go on to the Big Daddy, which is a foundation directory online. Most widely used source of prospective donors. I love it. You can probably tell, but I'm a big research geek, so don't take me too seriously. You can search on a couple of ways. You could search for grant makers or funding opportunities. And this is where the keywords we were just talking about come in very, very handy, okay? So you can go out to the Foundation Directory online and search by any of these criteria to see who's funding that area. So when you say who, you're going to think of things like youth, low-income persons, college students, men, women, LGBTQI. Who is the population that you are serving? That gives you one way to search. What? This is the one most people search on. The subject. What are we doing? A soup kitchen, an early educational program, classical ballet performance, any number of, bird conservation. I've just recently become a birder, so I'm getting big into that. Organization type is, are you a school? Are you a homeless shelter? Are you a chamber of commerce, right? Support strategy, the kind of grant that you're looking for, operating, seed money, capital, general operating, I already said that, program. Transaction type is this is a small one, how you'll get paid. Do you want in-kind services? Do you want multi-year funding, etc.? Geographic area served, this can be a wide one. For example, when I teach this, I show people, and we're going to go to the directory in just a minute, that say I'm looking for an organization in Everett, Washington. I want to raise some money for them. I did that last year. Well, I was able to search on Everett, Snohomish County, Puget Sound, Washington State, and nationally to see the potential funders out there, and I found folks at each level. So this keywording thing is where you want to be wide, you want to be broad, you want to try and think of any way you can slice and dice what you're doing to figure out what funders it would appeal to, right? And the Foundation Center helps you with this because they have right here at this link a philanthropic classification system with more than 800 keywords. And I'm going to give you an example here of how this works. Okay, I hope this is large enough for everybody. You figured out that I was in the arts for a long, long time, worked for a ballet company. If I wanted to go out and search for funding for ballet companies, this is the kind of the hierarchy of what would happen. I could search under arts and culture, and I would get every single arts and culture grant made in the country in a year. I could search on performing arts, right? See these little arrows? And then same, I could search on dance, or I could really get down and search on ballet. All of those are key. This is the taxonomy. This is the link I showed you before, right? Down here. So each one of these with the blue arrows is a keyword. Now, I'm kind of a geek, and I would tend to go to the arts and culture and go through every single stinking one in case I might miss something, right? But you can get as specific as you want, need, have the keywords for, etc. Everybody with me so far? Yes, no, maybe? Thumbs up? Thank you. Okay. All right, so you've got your keywords firmly in mind. Anybody have any questions about that where they don't thinking about your own programs or your own needs for funding, you are stuck on what some of your keywords might be? Throw them out in the chat if you wish. Otherwise, we will keep on moving. Okay. So you've got your keywords firmly in your mind, okay? Well, actually, let's talk a little bit more again about the criteria before we move on. The who, details of characteristics, right? And remember, it's not just, you know, homeless persons. Let's think about age, sex, race, ethnic heritage, etc. Okay? Girls or people with disabilities is an example. Work or type of organization. Okay, remember subject, that is what is being supported. Elementary education or clean water supply. What type of organization? Family foundations or schools. I won't spend too much time on this because I think we covered it pretty thoroughly. Geography, remember again, specific region of interest to the foundation. Now, when you get to the foundation's page, which we'll do in just a minute, you will see that they usually have geographic regions of interest listed. So if you go after Washington, if you're in New York State and you think you're going to apply to a foundation that is based in Washington, you better check their guidelines, which we'll see, to make sure that they do in fact fund in New York State. Make sense? Seems pretty straightforward, but this is a complicated thing and I've been doing it forever. So if I'm talking, if I'm being too basic, I apologize. I don't mean that. There's also sometimes a confusion between where a foundation is based and where they fund. Those may not be the same, right? We used to get, when I was at the Seattle Rep, we used to get funding from the Schubert Foundation, which was in New York, but funded theaters all over the country. Or, the national foundations, if any of you are fortunate enough to get funds from Rockefeller or Cerdna or et cetera, you know what I mean. Okay. So geography, cast your net wide. Remember what I said about Washington State, Puget Sound, look in your keywords, Snohomish County, Everett, all those were viable, right? Okay. Type of support, again, like I said, that's kind of like, if you will, how you want to get paid. Cash grant, of course, is the most frequent, but there are a few other types. So don't rule them out until you kind of looked at them and say, hey, could this work for us? And type of support, general, this is a huge list of all the different types of support. I won't read through it because it will take too much time, but you know that you have that there. And you can look and match what you are looking for with the type of support that foundations are willing to offer. So everybody get their typing fingers ready. So say I was trying to find funding for a Seattle-based homeless shelter looking to create a program for free meals. They've got the shelter thing in place with their beds and all, and now they want to feed people too. What are some possible keywords? Throw them out there. What do you think? They have to build this kitchen. That's a big hint. They have to staff and run it. They have to buy supplies on an ongoing basis. What do we think? Who would they be serving? Let's start with that one. Any thoughts on who they would be serving? Homeless, absolutely. But that's not the only one. It would obviously depend. I haven't given you a lot of information, right? Homeless in Seattle. But you could, in theory, put in homeless, you could put in families, you could put in children, depending on the population of the shelter, right? But homeless, people with mental health issues, yes. Soup kitchen is another one, absolutely. Right. Foster youth exiting the system, yes. So there's the who. Now what about the what? Yes, LGBTQ too. So when we get down to a feeding program, if you will, how many different ways are there to look at that? Well, feeding program, nutrition. I don't even know them all myself, to be honest. There are probably so many. subsistence, hunger is a key word. Food security, absolutely, yes. Awesome. You guys have it. Way to go. You could also look in the geographic area, of course. This is Seattle, but again, you could say Seattle, you could say Puget Sound, you could say Washington State. And then there's the type of support. Well, this is a new project, right? So we might be able to look at seed money. We might be able to look at make an argument for capital funding because we're building a kitchen, right? We would have an argument for operating because we will need to pay salaries and buy, pots and pans and things in the to operate this soup kitchen. And we could look for program funding for foundations and organizations that specifically fund some of the other things we've talked about, hunger or food insecurity, right? You've had a epiphany. Is it Fania or Fania? I'm sorry. I apologize. I'm gonna get it wrong the first
It's
time.
Fania.
What's your Fania? What is your epiphany? Share. Let's hear it.
Oh no, I was just when you were naming out the how part for the support strategy, because I was still trying to get my head around. It's like, I see. That's what.
Yeah, that's sometimes it's good, awesome. That's one of the things that it takes a bit to connect the arrows, which is why I put this big huge list in front of everybody without ever intending to read it.
Thank you, Angela.
You're welcome. All right, so we've got our keywords in place. We're going to go off to the Foundation Center and search on. This is obviously a screenshot. Homeless services in Washington State. So we put that in and we get this is only part of it, this big list of everybody who funds homeless services in Washington State. And I want to point out to y'all that when I did this test, I put in homeless, I started with, then I put in homeless shelters and homeless services and got 3 different lists. So the keywords really do matter, okay? All these folks have made grants to homelessness in the past year. Okay. And the beauty of it, and you can't do it because this is a screenshot, but we'll go in just a minute to the actual page, is you can come over to the grant maker name. Everybody see the mouse? And click on it. And it will take you to their page, to their profile in this directory. All right. So far, so good. Okay. Now I'm going to exit the PowerPoint and stop the share because I'm going to go to my Chrome and show you all the Foster Foundation page. Okay. You saw Foster on the list and here they are. Let's share this. Here we go. All right. So pretend, if you will, that I just clicked on their name in that list and it would take me right here. Okay. This is a foundation directory online. Let's see up here in the corner. We are at the Foster Grant Maker record, which has been updated last August. We can turn all this into a PDF, email it to ourselves if we wish. There's their website, contact info, who's who is the board and the staff that's listed. So scrolling down, and they're long, so I'm going to try to zip through this so we can have time for questions at the end. There's number of grants they've made and how much. Where's the money going? Remember that geographic distribution that we talked about? Well, most of it, $1 billion in Washington State. Smaller grants in smaller amounts of funding or total funding in Illinois and New York. And then looks like you can see the light color here in the gauge. Smaller grants in really most of the rest of the country. Most of their grants are $10,000 to $25,000. Okay. Here are the grants they made in 2018. And if you look over here on the side, we can hop around once we get used to what's in the profile, right? So here are the grants they made. You can look at them all. Funding interests, okay? Subjects, this is the activities where they fund, who they fund, how they fund, how you're going to get paid, and organization types is they are a family foundation and independent foundation, okay? Their purposes: giving to enhance the quality of life in the Pacific Northwest and Alaska, their support of the qualified needs in areas of arts and culture, medical research, treatment and care, education, human welfare. Okay, well, human welfare, that's where my soup kitchen fits in, right? If I worked for, let's see, a pet animal shelter, would I apply to foster? What do y'all think?
No.
Can you answer my question, please? Me? I said Maluma. Or do you need more description? It's very descriptive.
No, I would not. Animal welfare is nowhere in this list, all right? They list other funders that are similar. And then now we get down to the good stuff, the important stuff, in my opinion. How do we apply? Well, there's an application form. So you have to go to their website. Their board meets in December. So it looks like they only make grants once a year, right? The application needs to be in by the end of August. Their board meets in December, and you'll get to know the answer by the end of March. So this is a long timeline. When you're doing your planning, you need to be ready for it, right? Limitations: primarily the Northwest and Seattle and its neighboring communities. No sectarian or religious organization whose activities benefit their own members. No individual grants or for fundraising, endowment funds, scholarships, or unrestricted operating funds. No loans. Okay, so we already know now that we cannot apply to them for operating. It's going to have to be a program or capital or one of the other types of support that we talked about. Okay, here are their financials or 990s, who's on the board, who the founders were, and then, you know, information that press releases, et cetera, here, and then foundation contact information yet again. Okay, so that is the Foster Foundation, and that's the kind of information that you can expect to see when you do your research at the Foundation Directory online. Okay, what do we think so far? Questions? Everybody with me so far? I see some nods. Thank you. All right, let's go back to our PowerPoint. Just a few more slides to go. From current slide. All right, so after we've done or not after, I should say, as we do all this work, our next steps would be to create a prospect profile, and this is for our own database, our own information management system. And it's going to become very important as you implement a grants program because there's a lot of tracking, right? You're going to want to know who you researched. You're going to want to know if and when you applied, obviously the results, any contact with the foundation staff or board as you go along. Did you get the award? All the letters and documentation need to go into that. But for now, there's a prospect profile that is the basic contact information, what their interests are, what their application process is, etc. That's a PDF that you can use if you choose to from this site at Candid. Then I start to calendar deadlines. I mean, I don't even, I had a portfolio of 65 or 75 grants when I was writing full time. And how do you keep track of all that in your head, right? So yeah, application deadlines, report deadlines, how, I could include when to reach out, how long it had been, when I have a program that the funder had funded, I'd make a note, call them and tell them how it went, that kind of thing. And then if appropriate, reach out. This is where your relationship building starts, right? Reach out to the program officer to begin a dialogue about partnership. Now, sometimes it's not appropriate. If they say no phone calls, don't make a phone call. If they say, first step, submit a letter of inquiry, submit a letter of inquiry, and we'll talk about those next week. But if the light is green, then go ahead and make a call. I'm Angela Beard. I'm with Pacific Northwest Ballet. We see that you've recently decided, added arts education to your funding priorities. We have a brand new program that's serving, kids who qualify for free or reduced luncheons. Would you like to hear more about it? We're really providing, this is our purpose, these are our goals, etc. Right? And they'll either say no, would you send in an LOI, or they'll say, yeah, can I come? Would you like to come and sit with us? And that's how it starts, right? I can't encourage you enough to really try. It's not always possible, but really try to build that relationship, because people give money to people, and foundations are people too. Just maybe sometimes a little bit harder to access, but right. That is prospect research in a nutshell. And now I will take your questions. And just before we go on, I want to show you that I have put together a lot of resources for y'all. And then also I have my contact information here at the back, our Facebook page and our LinkedIn page. And like I said, whoa, sorry about that. I do this for a living for free. So once we're done here, the chamber, if you're interested in learning about other things about fundraising, please feel free to check us out on Facebook or send me an email and I'll add you to our list. So back to your questions. I see the chat flashing already. Okay. Oh, thank you, Regina. I hope so. I love prospect research. I'm a research geek, and I can talk about it till the cows come home. That and the need statement, which you guys will get next week. So I appreciate that it's helpful. Other questions? You all ready to go out and get online and start digging up even more candidates for funding for your nonprofits? Any for-profit folks out there who needed something else out of here that they want to ask about? I'm here for you.
Hi, hello, good afternoon.
Yeah. Hi.
My name is Sarah.
Sarah.
I currently own a catering company, Follow Me Catering Co.
Yep.
Thank you for your presentation and all of the wonderful information that you shared today.
Of course.
I want to start a nonprofit. And so what I want to do is I want to do teen girls from like in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And help them with job readiness, teaching them about credit, home ownership, everything that I didn't learn when I was that age. So, help them with jobs and things. So I don't know where I should really begin to do that.
Well,
So
my suggestion to you would be almost exactly the same as when you started your catering business. You probably, I'm assuming, did some market research, and you looked out there and you see what else is going on in the community, who else is meeting that need, if anyone,
Right.
and where you're going to add value to the community. A lot of people do, and bless them for it, have passion for a cause or a population or somebody they really want to help, and so they decide they want to start a nonprofit without realizing that they're already for doing the very same thing, right? So yeah, looking around your community, and if you see that there is a gap, that there is a place where your services make sense, then first of all, you can certainly come back to me. But then you get into the machine of the starting a nonprofit. You have to form a small board. You have to incorporate. You have to write out bylaws and articles of incorporation. Then you have to get your 501c3 from the IRS. Register with the state Secretary of State. There's a fabulous publication by the King County Bar Association that goes through every step you have to take to incorporate in Washington State, to fill all the legal requirements, right?
Mhm.
While simultaneously, of course, developing programs and starting, it's not easy, but it's very rewarding. So feel
Yes.
free, you want to reach out to me or check out that publication offline. That would be great. I would welcome it.
Awesome. Definitely. I will reach out to you. I will get your information from the chambers. So
Yeah.
I didn't
And
get a
these
chance to write
slides
it down when it was on the screen. I saw it up there,
No,
but
but we will send the slide chamber will send the slides out to everybody who registered.
okay.
So you will have it in your hand very shortly.
Oh, awesome. I took all these notes.
Oh,
Thank you.
well, never hurts, right?
Nope, not at all. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Other questions?
Thank you.
All right. Well, next, let me give you a little preview for next week. Next week, we start with proposal writing, okay? So we will go into the need statement, the needs or the problem statement, what issues you're trying to address in the community. And then we will talk about the project narrative, how you're addressing them in the community, okay? I hope to see you all back here next Tuesday. I'm looking forward to it. Again, you have the contact information in the slides that you'll receive. You have my email if you need me. I think you all know how to reach the chamber. If not, you should, because they're fabulous. What else, Zenobia? Am I forgetting anything before we send these lovely people off?
No,
Hello?
nothing at all. I had to step away, but I know it was some great information. And I would recommend going through the entire process, right? Not stopping at number one, going through the entire process so that you can pick up nuggets that you need to move forward. And I'm always open to feedback. So this was one kind of eye-opening. So we, let me go take it off live off Facebook because we're all dead. I think, like I said, we only sent this out really quickly because we thought of this. But so what I'm asking is members and community members, is there any information that you want or you need that the chamber can provide? And there's really no boundaries here, right? So just think, in a perfect world, I really wish someone could walk me through fill in the blank and then reach out to us and let us know, because I think this is something that for our for-profit and our nonprofit businesses is very important. And can get a lot of, garner a lot of information from here. So again, thank you all for joining. Thank you so much, Angela, for presenting today.
I love it.
And providing this information. We'll send the information out with contact information. And if you are working on a specific grant, so if the Washington 3, so if you're working on that grant and you have questions, please give me a call, because the chamber has been trained on that. And so just let us know if you're running into any hiccups there. And there was a question, any suggestions for grants for building maintenance of a nonprofit? That's a really good question. That was to
I know I'm
Angela.
late. I'm late with my question, but that just came to mind. Is it, are those really hard things to go after? Is, it's like you should be able to, I guess, maintain your own building, but are there grants out there that help you with we're a nonprofit that owns our building, but struggles to sometimes do the maintenance that it really needs. We got a 25-year-old HVAC system, those kinds of things.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to push it back on you, Debbie, sorry to say, but I'll help you with it if you'd like, and suggest that you take the link that Anne gave us. Think of your keywords. So HVAC, building maintenance, employment, because it looks like you do employment services, right? You just never know. And do a search on them because the King County Library link is right here. And see what you come up with.
Yeah, I will. Thank you. I appreciate that, because it's always, we think about the services that we provide, but there's so much more to to actually making the nonprofit work that would be helpful from some of these grants and foundations.
And I would really encourage you to use that taxonomy. I know it's all sounds 800 keywords and scary and all that, overwhelming and all, but it really helps you to focus in. Okay. So give it a shot.
Thank you.
Yeah. And Debbie, give me a call. I think I may have, we had some upgrades at the chamber. I mean, one that comes to mind is Puget Sound Energy, right? So getting that information correct. There's an HVAC program. We were kind of getting ours completed. And so through certain companies, you get a discount if you use a certain company through the state. I can't really formulate the answer now, but I know the chamber personally did that, and we are a special nonprofit, so 501c6, which means, you know, the threshold for a 501c3 would probably be a lot easier than it was for us. So give me a call personally tomorrow. I have a ribbon cutting, but give me a call tomorrow, and we can talk about we can talk about that for sure. So good. Well,
Great.
wonderful. Well, if you guys
Thank
have not
you.
already applied, you know, just keep an eye out on the chamber website for any grants that are coming out from the state, also from the county, and the city of Kent will also be doing another round of grants here pretty soon as well. So awesome. Well, thank you all very much. If you haven't
Thank
already, put
you.
your
Have a
information in the
lovely
chat. Hey,
evening.
Miss Joy.
And we'll
Hey,
see you next
beautiful.
week. All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you. God
Bye-bye.
bless.
Have a good day,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Thanks. Angela? Oh, she left. Okay.